But I think that the
uniform.
more you know about everything, I think the more open you are to that magic moment when it crops up. You sort of, it may not increase your knowledge along the way, but it certainly makes you more sensitive to what you're doing. And I think that that's the important thing, is to sort of don't wonder, you don't want to wear a clown's hat or something like that, stand out in front, you know, hide yourself away. And but I think the more you know, such as waiting for Godot and all of these things, I think the more you're likely to find something, to find an interest in something that you wouldn't if you didn't have that background. So, you know, just keep reading, looking. Watch good films. Don't watch Hollywood films. But watch films made by independent filmmakers or made in Europe somehow. Those are great films. That's simple.
Yep.
One more question. Is there any photograph that you missed that you weren't ready for, that you regret?
Do I regret making?
No, that you regret not getting?
Oh, so many of them.
Is there a number one?
The photographs that I missed. Mostly I missed them by the subject changing, moving away, turning their head, either looking at me or away from me, so that the initial impact of the image is no longer there. I mean, they didn't do it on purpose. Usually, if they put up their hand or something and say, no, not me, I go up and say, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't take the photograph, what should I? And usually they'll say, yeah. They're curious, you know, so why you want to photograph them, since you don't know them. But they understand what it is. Okay. Yeah.
Can you, speaking about that, can you talk about when do you get permission in writing, now this is this society we live in, as far as getting legal signatures for people to use their photographs?
The problem there is you should check really with an attorney someplace, because as I understand it, the only time you can't show a photograph in a book or something like that is if it's an advertisement. So if it's on the cover of a book you're doing, make sure it's impossible to identify who that person is. But you can have a show like this of anybody without any problem. As long as the other problem is if you make somebody look foolish or silly or embarrass them in some way, you know, then if you happen to run into a great actress with nothing on, a photograph her, that's a double whammy. You don't do it.
Right.
Okay. But yeah, those are the just be careful how you're going to use it and what it does to the person. You have an embarrassment.
Well, he's way over there.
Okay.
I'll wait for you.
Yeah, but you know, the other point is, I never did that because you can't do both. I can't, if I stopped to have everybody sign a release, I never got half the shots that I got. And so, as soon as you get through with one shot, boom, you're off to another one. There's one right around the corner. And so,
I have a question about your equipment, the
yes?
recommended equipment that you, for an amateur photographer.
Who's talking?
Myself.
The
Type of
Oh, I
equipment,
get to know people. Yeah.
type of equipment that you recommend using.
Oh, well, there's only one camera. I'm joking.
Oh.
It's a Leica, this is the best. The Leica is the best camera. It's silent.
Which one? Leica? Oh, okay.
Oh, that's film. You do film or digital?
Well, digital, right?
Digital, yeah. Well, you can do digital. You know, that's another problem. See, now you got me started. Not there yet. The problem
to say a few words?
Talk into the mic.
Bill, talk into the mic.
I'm gonna go, oh, okay, all right, yeah, okay. Okay. The problem with digital photography is that, well, there's so many problems. The main problem I see with digital is that, now for example, and if I said this earlier, you can forget about Life magazine. Nobody that I remember hearing that made the changes on. But with digital, you can no longer believe, not only digital, you can't believe a digital photograph. It's just impossible because it's so easily changed. A friend of mine, Bob Vigiletti, some of you may know him, had a job taking a photograph of a company, a small company of the whole group of people out in front of the shop. And he did the photograph, these 20 people, and then about 2 weeks later, before the owner had a chance to do anything with the photograph, he came and he said, Bob, Joe quit. Bob said, well, too bad. But he said, he's in the photograph. He shouldn't be there. I hired Fred to be there. Now, can you put Fred in place? Yeah, I think I can. He made the photograph with Fred instead of Joe. So this is why it's impossible to believe a digital photograph. It's impossible. And it's also, that would be okay if that was the only thing, but it doesn't stop there. But because you don't believe the digital image, you no longer can really believe the silver image, the film. It affects every, and that's what I was trying to say up front of the talk, that the whole photographic image making system is shot as a truthful medium. And we can no longer trust any image as being truthful. So, and I don't see anything coming along to replace that. But if that's a tremendous loss, because as I said with Life magazine, over 40 years, I don't remember anyone ever complaining about, you looked at those photographs as though they were the truth, as this they were taken. And you can't do that anymore. So that's why these photographs belong to a past age. If I wasn't here and you didn't trust me, tell you, I have done nothing to them, you couldn't tell whether the thing had been manipulated or not. And that's a big loss that we have not replaced and probably never will. So that now what do? How do we? It's going back to the same period when, oh, I put you to sleep, I'm sorry. That's why there's no way, no system that will give us the truth. In fact, I was just, maybe some of you have listened to that great lecture at the DIA on Civil War and photography. There you had a real lecturer. I mean, he didn't forget one thing. But you can't really believe what you're looking at anymore, and there's nothing that's ready to replace it that I'm aware of that's going to work. So that we've got to go back to the Civil War period when there was to go back beyond that because there was photography in the Civil War. But go back a little bit further, where you had to simply just trust an artist with a sketch pad or something to believe it, and then you couldn't believe that either. Sketch pad was definitely not a photograph in its heyday. But now with photography being being similar, it also has taken on that same doubtful quality, and you just cannot trust any photo. You have to trust me to believe any of that. Before that, you didn't have to believe me. You just knew. You look at the photograph, and as a photograph, you were pretty positive. You know, like the album, photographic album that people collect. That's one reason, and this again goes back to Sontag, that just simply by knowing that when you photographed Uncle John, you look at the photograph, that's Uncle John, that's not Aunt Millie, that's Uncle John. And so there was that truthful spin-over from everybody collecting photographs and saving them in albums that made the album and photography believable. And once that album is full of digital equipment, digital film, digital images, that's gone. So we lost an awful lot of truth saying, you know. Now it was possible to manipulate negatives, but very difficult to do and very easy to identify, to figure out. So if it's true, if the photographer would lie, but the image would sometimes fool or change his story and refute his story some way or another. But now we're on our own. We're on our own, folks. It's up to you. And what that does, of course, it makes you more knowledgeable about the culture that you're living in. Is it possible? Is there something about that you can believe for some other reason than the fact that it's a digital image? So it means that we're all going to have to be much more knowledgeable about the society in which we live. Is it possible for somebody to make that photograph? Or is it not possible? Simply because you know something about you know the culture in depth. And so it's up to you, the viewer, now, to determine whether the image is correct or not, truth or not. These, if you trust me, I made so many goofy mistakes here today, you gotta believe me, right? But, you know, just from my being here and telling you, and you trust me, these photographs are as I saw them. They're real. They're not manipulated. They're not changed. I detest photographs that are manipulated. I just don't want it. That's not the art of photography. Always is dependent on a photographic image that was purely photographic. Otherwise, there was no reason to take it. You can make a drawing not as fast, but you can make a better one if you forget about photography. But in the heyday of photography, what made it an art form was the fact that it was reality taken as reality was. Once you start manipulating it, you probably end up with kitsch. Total kitsch, just nonsense. But to catch something real, something that exists, and no matter if it's incidental, it doesn't have to be a fabulous image. It's better if it is. But just the fact that it's there says something to you, and in meaningful terms, you can believe it. It's a moment in time. Just think about it. You know, each one of these photographs just records one single incident in an infinite amount of time. And I think that's what photography means. But photography has to be given its opportunity to do that, and that means no manipulation, no screwing around with the image. That destroys it. That destroys the photographic quality. And none of these have been manipulated, you know. They're just as I saw them. So, and that's why I like, and why street photography is so important to me, because it's done properly, and in most cases you can still do that, I guess. But all I can say is it's a great life. Walking the streets of Detroit. One other thing. I hope nobody's going to the opera tonight. Oh, I forgot that other thing. See, that's the big problem that drives me crazy. I have started out on something, and if I change somebody asks a question, and I just drop this for a second, I can never get back to it. Yeah, so, anyway, I guess we're through. I'm feeling fine, but,
Is there any more questions?
you always have something to say.
I'll tell you later.
Well, thank you very much.